Elena stood in front of the mirror in her tiny kitchen holding a steaming bowl of chicken soup. She told herself that today would be the day she conquered the neighborhood. Having moved into this rundown old building just 3 days ago, she had already burned a tray of cookies, which she still ate because she couldn't bear to waste them. Determined, she decided to try again with chicken soup. She was certain about only one dish. She wouldn't make a mistake. Who could possibly refuse chicken soup? She whispered to herself while taming her unruly curls, then stepped outside with the bowl and a bright smile. House number 9 stood next door, a small, faded green dwelling that seemed to have turned its back on happiness. The grass in the front yard was patchy and uneven. The curtains were perpetually drawn, and the neighbors murmured that the man who lived there was the oddest on the block. But Elena felt no fear. She was the kind of person who believed that a warm bowl of soup could thaw even the iciest of hearts. "I'll be his ray of sunshine," she reminded herself as she stepped onto the porch in her tattered, frayed sneakers. The porch of number 9 gleamed with a suspicious slickness, likely from the rain that had fallen the night before, but Elena remained oblivious. She pressed the doorbell, cradling the soup in her other hand as if it were a treasured offering. No response. She rang again, then knocked, muttering softly under her breath. "Let's see what's inside. I'm not a delivery person." Just then, her foot slipped on the wetwood. "Oh my God!" She yelped, arms flailing to maintain her balance, but the soup wasn't so fortunate. It soared into the air, spinning in a perfect slow-motion arc, reminiscent of a cinematic moment, before crashing onto the porch with a resounding splat. Chicken soup splattered everywhere, onto her jeans, into her hair, even a bit on the door. Before she could regain her composure, one of her sneakers, dislodged by her wild stumble, flew off her foot and hurtled toward the glass panel beside the door. Crash! The glass rattled but held firm, unbroken. The commotion was so intense that it jolted the entire street. Elena remained frozen, one shoe on her foot, the other missing, with soup in her hair and her mouth hanging open in disbelief. "Oh dear, oh dear. Oh no." The door swung open abruptly, revealing a tall, lanky man with disheveled black hair that seemed to have been a home for a bird. Clad in a wrinkled t-shirt and gray sweatpants, he narrowed his eyes, his expression twisted into a scowl as if he had been jolted from a pleasant dream into a waking nightmare. "What did you just throw at my house?" he snapped, his deep voice tinged with irritation, pointing at the shoe that was now rolling across the porch. Elena blinked, struggling to maintain a shaky smile even as her mind screamed for her to run now. Hi," she said, her voice cracking. "Hello, I'm Elena, your new neighbor from apartment number 8. I intended to offer you some soup, but now you can call me a vandal." She pointed to the soupy chaos spreading across the porch, then shrugged as if this were just another ordinary day. Nathan, she assumed that was his name, given that the old lady at number 7 had spoken of a wild Nathan, stared at her as if she had just emerged from an alien spacecraft. He looked at the shattered bowl, then at the shoe, and back at her, his lips pressed together tightly as if suppressing a tempest. "I do not consume soup." His tone was icy, and "I couldn't stand the neighbors, they should just leave." He turned to slam the door shut. "Wait!" Elena shouted, raising her hand like a traffic cop. She stepped forward, almost slipping again in the soup, but managed to catch herself on the doorframe. "I mean, you don't have to eat it. I simply wanted to greet you," and she lowered herself to retrieve her shoe, shaking off a few droplets of soup. "I assure you, it wasn't my intention to throw it, it simply took off on its own. I tend to be quite awkward." "You'll adapt to it," Nathan said, turning back to fix her with a piercing glare. She claimed she could freeze an ocean. "What did you just say?" "Get used to it." He crossed his arms, his voice laced with sarcasm. "Are you planning to throw a fridge at my house next time?" Elena erupted into a hearty, carefree laugh, despite the fact that nothing about this situation was amusing. "No way. I'm not particularly strong," but she gestured towards the chaos. "It's truly delightful soup, chicken with carrots, a touch of onion, and some pepper to warm your soul. Wouldn't you like to sample a bite before tackling the cleanup?" She offered a playful wink, hoping to lift his spirits, but Nathan only intensified his glare. "I'm not hungry," he said, then gestured down the street. "Would you mind departing now?" Elena sighed, shrugging. "I don't want to deal with any more messes." "Fine. I'm leaving," but she reached into her pocket, retrieving a yellow sticky note and a short pen. With quick strokes, she wrote something and placed it next to the puddle of soup. "If you reconsider, take a chance on it. It's an incredible soup. No regrets here." She leaped off the porch, oblivious to her missing shoe, and almost stumbled once more. "Oof," she yelped, clutching the fence before spinning around with a playful grin. "See, I told you I'm clumsy." Nathan didn't respond. He just stood there, watching her hobble home with one bare foot, holding her soggy shoe. The door slammed shut. But just before it closed completely, Elena caught a faint Not quite annoyed, more like he was thrown off by her. Back home, Elena flopped onto her couch, staring at her soup-streaked hair in the small wall mirror. What a way to meet the neighbors, she muttered, then burst out laughing. She pictured Nathan standing in his house, staring at the mess in her note. It's an incredible soup. No regrets here. Elena, the vandal of number 8, was uncertain whether he'd tidy it up or let it stand as a cautionary tale for future neighbors. But one thing was certain, she wasn't backing down. Tomorrow, I'll attempt cookies. She told herself, then winced, recalling how she'd nearly set her old apartment ablaze the last time she baked. On the other side of the wall, Nathan stood in his dim kitchen, broom in hand, peering through the curtain at the chaos on his porch. He muttered, "What a disaster." But as his gaze landed on the yellow note, the corner of his mouth twitched just a tiny bit, enough to make him question his sanity for finding this slightly amusing. Chapter 2, The Clumsy Girl and the Crazy Neighbor. 3 days after the flying soup disaster, Elena still hadn't given up on befriending the neighborhood, especially the oddball neighbor at number 9. She was the kind of person who was foolishly optimistic, always believing things would work out even though reality often proved otherwise. For example, last week, she had carefully arranged a row of cacti in her front yard, envisioning a vibrant green oasis. However, she neglected to water them and they withered away like overcooked vegetables, much like the stray cat she also forgot to tend to. She had taken in a little creature, naming it Fluff, feeding it milk, and even crafting a cozy bed from an old towel. Yet, come morning, it dashed away, leaving her with a bowl of spilled milk now teeming with ants. My life's a comedy series, she mused, a grin spreading across her face as she glanced at her parched cacti. This quaint neighborhood wasn't quite the serene paradise one might envision. The houses were aged, paint flaking, and the neighbors favored hushed conversations over friendly waves. Hello, but what captivated Elena the most were the tales of Nathan, the resident at number 9. Old Mrs. Martha from number 7 had once recounted with sparkling eyes how he had chased away an ice cream clown simply for singing too loudly. He stood in the middle of the street, wielding a leaf broom and shouting, "Be quiet or I'll force that ice cream down your throat." Mr. Tom from number 10 interjected, "It was my child's birthday that day." The entire block was in fits of laughter. Elena couldn't tell if it was real, but she imagined Nathan as a humorous antagonist, grumpy, slightly unhinged, and perhaps amusing. That morning, Elena resolved to tend to her cacti even though she realized they were likely beyond redemption. She donned an oversized t-shirt, a worn straw hat, and carried a small watering can borrowed from Mrs. Martha, all while humming a spontaneous melody, "Cacti, don't die on me. I adore you deeply." She caught the sound of complaints from number 9 as she glanced upward. She spotted Nathan in his yard, brandishing a long-handled broom, his expression contorted as if sleep had been snatched away from him. He swung the broom erratically at his roof, emitting low growls. "These annoying birds are destroying my home. Get lost, you winged nuisances." Elena blinked, then erupted into laughter, a loud, resonant sound that traveled over the short wooden fence separating their yards. Nathan spun around, his eyes narrowing into tiny daggers. "What's so funny?" He tightened his grip on the broom, as if he were ready to throw it at her. "No, nothing." Elena waved her hands in defense, yet the grin remained firmly on her face. "It seems you're pursuing birds with a broom. Should I contact animal control to lift your spirits?" She placed the watering can down, hands on her hips, feigning seriousness. "I believed your disdain for me was sufficient, but it seems you harbor a dislike for pigeons as well." Nathan shot her a glare that lingered, a testament to his multitasking prowess. She pondered whether he was scheming to bury her right there in the yard. "You're too loud," he remarked, his tone icy and subdued. "These birds have been perched on my roof all week, making a mess everywhere. Try living with that stench and see if you can scare them off." He swung the broom again, this time striking a bird that squawked and took flight, leaving a few feathers to drift down. Elena tilted her head, observing the feathers before glancing back at him. "Okay, I understand. But chasing birds with a broom makes you resemble an old man shooing kids out of his garden, rather than a superhero defending his roof." She picked up the watering can, feigning an attempt to water her plants, but ended up splashing herself in the face instead. "Ah!" she yelped, wiping her face with her sleeve before turning to Nathan with an awkward smile. "See, I've got my own problems. Seems we share some common ground, don't we?" Not even close, Nathan retorted, his tone devoid of inflection. He started to walk away, but Elena wasn't going to let him slip away so easily. "Hey, wait!" she called out, sprinting to the fence and almost stumbling over the watering can she had dropped. "What's your name?" "My name is Elena. You might recall that incident with the soup. Will you be sharing a bit about yourself?" Nathan ceased his backward glances. "I don't need friends," he said, each word sharp and deliberate, as if he were swatting away an annoying fly. "And I don't care who you are. Stop coming over here." "Oh, fine." Elena shrugged, her eyes glinting with playful mischief. "Then I'll call you Broom Guy. It suits your style." She pointed at the broom in his hand, laughing even harder as his expression shifted to one of annoyance. "Kidding, kidding. I'm not particularly harsh," but she crouched down to retrieve a feather that had drifted close to the fence, lifting it triumphantly as if it were a prize, ready to assist in the pursuit of birds. "My singing is truly terrible. It'll scare them all away." Nathan didn't respond immediately. He stood there, gripping the broom, gazing at her as if she were the most peculiar being he'd ever encountered. But then, a miracle occurred. The corner of his mouth twitched ever so slightly, as if he were battling a smile and losing. "You're nuts," he muttered too softly for her to catch before turning and slamming the door shut. Elena lingered for a moment, still clutching the feather. "Did I just make him laugh?" she pondered, then skipped back to her house, completely forgetting about her wilting cacti baking in the sun. She was unaware that, inside number 9, Nathan flung the broom onto the couch, sank into a chair, and murmured, "She's trouble." Yet this time his tone lacked the usual grumpiness. A subtle trace of something gentler lingered in the air. He'd never confessed. That afternoon, Elena sat in her kitchen, slurping instant noodles and jotting down a note. "Broom Guy, I'll bring cookies next time. Don't chase me off like the birds." She stuck it on her window facing number 9, grinning wide. She knew he couldn't read it from there, but imagining him fuming when he saw it was enough to make her day. "I'll get him to laugh out loud one of these days," as she told herself, then spilled her noodles on her shirt and yelped, "Oh, no, not today." Chapter 3, The Soup War, and the troll notes. 1,500 words after the flying soup fiasco in the broom-chasing birds spectacle, Elena decided that Nathan, or Broom Guy, as she'd nicknamed him, wouldn't escape her friendly onslaught so easily. She wasn't the type to give up, even if her cooking skills could make the world question the definition of edible. He needs someone to brighten up that gloomy life of his, she told herself, standing in her kitchen with an apron still dusted with flour from her last baking disaster today. She resolved to try again, not with soup. The memory of the flying shoe still haunted her, but with cookies, a treat she believed was pretty hard to mess up. Elena stood over a tray of freshly baked cookies, inspecting her handiwork, the round, perfect cookies. What she had imagined had transformed into a charred, misshapen disaster, darkened at the edges. "Probably still edible," she muttered, taking a bite and grimacing as the bitter flavor assaulted her senses. Yet, with her unwavering optimism, she packed them into a paper box and scribbled a note on a yellow sticky. "These have a slightly darker hue, yet they are still suitable for consumption. I swear." Elena number 8 dashed out of the house. She left the box on Nathan's doorstep, knocked twice, then raced back home like a child playing a trick. The following day, Elena peeked through her curtains, brimming with excitement. She didn't spot Nathan, but the box had vanished. He had taken it, and she celebrated, clapping as if she had just triumphed in a chess match. She envisioned him inside, savoring the burnt cookies and quietly admiring her skill. But that afternoon, when she went to check her mail, she discovered the empty box discarded at her door, accompanied by a hastily written note. "You're a terrible cook. Cease your efforts." The handwriting was chaotic, precisely what she anticipated from someone who didn't spare words. Elena bent over in laughter. He devoured them all, yet still found something to grumble about. She hurried inside, seized another sheet of paper, and began to write. "Oh, you devoured them all and still threw shade at them? Bold move for next time. I will enhance them." She secured the note to the vacant box, returned it to Nathan's doorstep, and concealed herself to observe if he would retrieve it. Yet, The entire day went by without any indication of his presence. He's likely too shy to respond, she reasoned, before shifting her focus to her next plan. The next day, Elena prepared a cup of tea using inexpensive supermarket bags, but it turned cold as she became engrossed in watching comedy clips on her phone. Oh well, cold's fine, she shrugged, pouring it into an old plastic cup and jotting a note. Tea for grumpy people. Drink it before I tell the whole block. You're picking on me. She placed the cup on Nathan's doorstep, tossing in a lollipop. She discovered a surprising bribe in her bag this time. Concealed behind the fence, she waited to see his reaction. Less than 10 minutes later, Nathan's door swung open, and he stepped out with a broom in hand, eyeing the tea and lollipop as if they might explode. He picked up the note, skimmed it, and muttered something Elena couldn't hear. She clamped a hand over her mouth to stifle a laugh as he lifted the tea, sniffed it, and then dumped it straight onto the ground. Hey, she called out from behind the fence, unable to contain herself. What are you up to? I poured my soul into that, but Nathan turned, his expression clouding over. Are you observing my actions? He snapped, clutching the empty cup. This tea is ice cold. Are you trying to poison me or what? Poison? No way. Elena stepped out, hands on hips. It's cold because I was busy watching a movie, but my good intentions were piping hot. If you're just gonna dump it, fine, but why not keep the lollipop? It was free. Nathan glanced at the lollipop still sitting on the porch, then glared at her. I don't need stuff from strangers, he said, though his tone lacked the chill it had before. He picked up the lollipop, stuffed it into his pocket, and stormed back inside, slamming the door. Elena stood there, stunned, then burst out laughing. He kept the lollipop. Progress. She went home feeling as if she'd scored a point in some invisible game. But she didn't stop there the next day. This time she crafted a petite cake. It didn't ignite, however. The shape was peculiar. She had intended to create a smiley face, but it resembled more of a squashed frog. She penned a note, "Smile for once. Your face looks like the world owes you money," and left the cake on Nathan's doorstep with a plastic fork to avoid any complaints about a mess. That afternoon, while Elena was tending to her plants, she ended up splashing herself in the face once more. She heard a knock. Surprised, she rushed to open her door and discovered an empty cake plate accompanied by a note that read, "Ugly cake like you, but edible." Elena doubled over with laughter, tears streaming down her face. Oh my goodness, he's playfully teasing me in return. She burst in, eager to snatch up some paper and scrawl, "Ugly cake, and you devoured it all. Who's the shameless one now? Next time I'll make it beautiful, so brace yourself." The note battle continued as Elena left a box of savory crackers, not a hint of sweetness. Just right for someone who despises fun like you. Nathan shot back, "You're louder than these crackers." She countered with a cup of lemonade, saying, "Drink this to add some sweetness." He handed back the empty cup, "Still bitter like you." Every time she read his notes, Elena burst into laughter, while Nathan remained pensive. He would never confess it, but he found himself anticipating her peculiar gifts. One day, he stood in his kitchen, gazing at the lumpy smiley face cake, muttering to himself, "She's nuts." Yet, as he took a bite, the corner of his mouth lifted, revealing the first hint of a smile. No one noticed, but Elena felt the barrier between them beginning to crumble, one note at a time. "He doesn't hate me," she whispered to herself before letting the fresh lemonade slip from her grasp. She burst onto the floor, shouting, "Oh no, not again!" Her shout echoed through the window, and at number 9, Nathan heard it and shook his head. But this time he didn't grumble. He just chuckled ever so faintly. Chapter 4. The random incident. He faints, she screams. That morning, Elena woke up in an unusually cheerful mood. After days of verbal sparring through notes with Nathan, she felt like she was winning this friendly war. Today, she decided to water her patch of dead cacti, not because she hoped to revive them, but because it gave her an excuse to linger near the fence and spy on whether Nathan would pick up her latest note. She'd left a box of cookies, not burnt this time, but overly salty because she'd mistaken salt for sugar, with a message: "Eat these to match your salty attitude." Elena, dressed in an oversized t-shirt and a tattered straw hat, with a petite watering can in hand, she sang a whimsical melody: "Cacti come back to life. I require you to tease the broom guy." Mid-song, heard a loud thud from the yard of number 9 and looked up. She saw Nathan sprawled flat among the patchy grass, clutching his chest, his face pale as paper. His beloved broom lay abandoned beside him, as if it had lost its final battle with the pigeons. Elena froze for a second, the watering can slipping from her hand with a clank, splashing water onto her feet. "Oh my God!" she exclaimed, leaping over the fence with an unexpected burst of speed. "Nathan, are you dead? Please refrain from passing away in front of my residence." She fell to her knees beside him, panic coursing through her veins as her hands shook. Nathan lay still, unresponsive. His lips bore a hint of purple, and his breathing was so faint it seemed it could cease at any moment. "No, no, no," Elena whispered, gently patting his cheeks. "Hey, it's time to rise and shine. This isn't the place to lose consciousness. I don't know CPR." She looked around the yard. It was empty, not a soul in sight. A light rain started to fall, adding to the chaos. "Okay, calm down," she reminded herself, her fingers fumbling for her phone in her pocket, her unsteady hands almost letting it slip away. She picked up the phone and called 911, her voice raised as she spoke into the receiver. "Greetings. An ambulance is required. My neighbor collapsed. He's sprawled in the yard, and I'm at a loss for what to do. Hurry to 9 Elmwood Street." The operator asked a series of questions, but Elena stuttered, "I don't know." He clutched his chest and fell. "It's not my cookies, I promise." She hung up, turning back to Nathan, who lay still in the rain. "I need to pull him into the shade." She made her choice, nonetheless. She was completely at a loss on how to shift someone who towered over her, clutching his arms tightly. She pulled with all her might, but he felt as solid as a sack of bricks. "Seriously, what do you consume to be this heavy?" she muttered as she took a few steps, only to trip over the broom and fall backward. At that moment, a clink caught her attention. Nathan's glasses, precariously balanced on his nose, slipped off and slid directly into the nearby storm drain. "Oh no," Elena screamed, crawling to the edge of the drain, watching the glasses disappear into the murky water. "Nathan, I'm sorry. I misplaced your glasses." She glanced back. He remained unresponsive. The rain grew heavier, drenching her shirt, yet she felt indifferent. With renewed determination, she tugged once more, murmuring, "If you don't wake up, I'll leave you here for the birds to poop on." Finally, she dragged him under the porch overhang, propping him up with his head resting on her soggy sneakers. The ambulance arrived after 10 agonizing minutes that felt like a lifetime. 2 paramedics stepped out, firing off questions. "Do you have a connection to him?" Elena, her hair slicked against her face, responded, "I live next door to him. I'm uncertain about what the issue might be. I just witnessed him fall." They swiftly placed Nathan onto a stretcher, checked his pulse, and hurried him into the vehicle with a sense of urgency. "Will you be joining us?" Elena nodded without a moment's pause. "Absolutely. I misplaced his glasses and now I must offer my apologies at the hospital." Elena sat in the waiting room, hunched over and drenched, gripping a cold cup of coffee. She abstained from drinking. The tremors coursed through her, not from the cold, but from the haunting image of Nathan's collapse replaying in her mind. "I had assumed he was merely in a foul mood," she muttered as a doctor appeared, calling her name. "Are you related to Nathan Hayes?" Elena gave a slight shake of her head. "No, merely a neighbor." "How is he?" The doctor, sighing as he guides her to a quiet corner. "He has end-stage heart failure," he said in a low voice. "We've stabilized him, but it's critical. He's been refusing a transplant for some time now. He doesn't have much time." Elena gaped, her jaw dropping in disbelief as the weight of the situation hit her. Heart failure, end stage. She blinked, trying to process it all, and here they were. I assumed his grumpiness stemmed from his disdain for my appearance. I even playfully taunted him with some salty cookies. The doctor looked intrigued, raising an eyebrow at my ignorance of the situation. Elena simply shook her head, managing a forced smile. I had a feeling he despised pigeons in my soup. Oh, and I dropped his glasses down a drain. She recounted dragging him to safety, her tone a blend of concern and the ridiculousness of the situation. The doctor offered a faint smile. You were his lifeline. If you hadn't dialed 911 when you did, things could have turned out differently. Elena was guided to the recovery room, where Nathan rested on a bed, his eyes shut and machines beeping softly around him. She stood beside him, hands clasped, uncertain of what to say. After a moment, Nathan's eyes fluttered open, locking onto her with a weary yet piercing look. "What are you doing here?" he asked. With a raspy voice, he asked, and Elena jumped before breaking into a grin. "I rescued you. You collapsed in the yard. I pulled you onto the porch and dialed for the ambulance." But she scratched her head, a blush creeping across her cheeks. "Your glasses have unfortunately fallen down a drain." "Apologies," Nathan furrowed his brow, gazing at her in disbelief. "You pulled me along," he whispered under his breath. "I believed I had been struck by a truck." "No truck in sight." Elena gestured with her hands, saying, "It's just me." I raised my voice quite a bit, "But you caught me saying not to die in front of my house, correct?" She burst into laughter, but fell silent when he remained quiet. "Hello, are you all right? The doctor said you've got a walking disaster on your hands." Nathan interrupted, his voice weak yet laced with sarcasm. "I passed out and still heard you screaming. My head hurts worse because of you." He closed his eyes as if to drift off again, but the corner of his mouth twitched, a familiar sign Elena was beginning to recognize. "Yeah, I'm clumsy," she confessed to sitting by his bed. "But I had no idea you were unwell. I thought you truly despised me." Her voice softened, losing its typical cheer. For the first time, Nathan opened his eyes, gazing at her for an extended moment before sighing. "I don't hate you," he whispered softly. She nearly overlooked it. "I simply prefer to keep my distance." Elena blinked, then offered a faint smile. "So you enjoy my cookies, do you?" Nathan shot a glare but remained silent, turning his face aside. She gently patted his shoulder and said, "Rest up, broom guy. I'll go make you some tea this time." It was going to be sweltering. She stepped outside, yet her heart felt burdened. He didn't harbor any hatred towards her, yet he was on the brink of death, and she remained oblivious to that stark reality. Chapter 5: The First Conversation. 3 days following the fainting episode in the yard, Elena had nearly pushed the weight of it all from her mind. She found herself at the hospital, refusing to let sadness linger for too long. To her, life unfolded as a series of amusing misadventures. She always managed to find humor in her mishaps. This morning, she faced a culinary disaster while trying to make orange jam, a promise she made after her hospital visit for hot tea. Instead, she ended up with a burnt, sticky mess. Clearly, cooking isn't her forte. She muttered, her gaze fixed on the scorched pot, before deciding to step outside to clear her mind. With a glass of plain water in hand, too cautious to try tea again, and a notebook ready for another note to Nathan, she found herself struggling to think of anything clever. As she fiddled with her pen on the porch, a soft, hesitant knock broke the silence, distinct from the rapid tapping of Mrs. Martha or the loud banging of Mr. Tom delivering misdirected mail. This knock seemed uncertain, as if the person outside was unsure of their presence. Startled, she jumped up, knocking over her glass of water, which splashed across her feet. "Who's that?" she mumbled, wiping her hands on her shirt before rushing to the door. There stood Nathan, tall and lanky, his hair still a bird's nest, dressed in a gray t-shirt and faded jeans. He looked less pale than he had in the hospital, but his eyes carried their usual weariness. In his hands was a bag of small, rough-skinned oranges, likely from the nearby convenience store. His voice, low and laced with irritation, cut through the air as he thrust the bag toward her. "Don't drop it this time." Elena blinked, then a wide grin spread across her face, momentarily forgetting the puddle beneath her. She just entered. "Oh, you certainly know how to purchase oranges," she teased, taking the bag from him. "I thought your skills were limited to yelling at birds and chasing neighbors with a broom." She opened the bag, sniffed an orange, and wrinkled her nose. Do they have a tangy taste? I'm not fond of sour oranges. Were they picked with care? Nathan shot her a fierce look, his arms crossed defiantly. I didn't choose them on your behalf. He remarked with a hint of sarcasm. I purchased them for my own use. The physician indicated that they are beneficial for my health. I had some to spare, so I brought them over. Don't misunderstand me. He averted his gaze, as if shy about his initial gesture of goodwill, whether it was extra or not. I'm still thankful. Elena's laughter rang out as she placed the bag on the porch step. She gestured toward an aged wooden chair close by. Take a seat, you're just standing there like a lamppost and it's making me feel dizzy. I will fetch you some water. Don't run off. She whirled back inside, almost stumbling over the spilled water, letting out a yelp. Oh no. Nathan heard her shout and shook his head, yet he still shuffled over to sit, hands stuffed in his pockets as if compelled. Elena returned with 2 glasses of water, one for her, one for him, but her clumsiness caused some of his to slosh onto the porch. Oops, sorry. She offered it with a shy smile, extending her hand. I can be quite clumsy at times. Nathan took the glass, eyeing the puddle spreading beneath him and muttering to himself as he adjusted to the situation. I've grown accustomed to it. From the moment we crossed paths, you've had a knack for making a mess. They lingered beneath the soft glow of the midday sun, the stillness interrupted only by the far-off cooing of pigeons perched on the roof of number 9. Elena took a sip of her water before diving into a tale, unable to bear the quiet. You know, there was a time I accidentally set my kitchen ablaze while trying to make soup. She exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with excitement. I was attempting to make pumpkin soup, but I completely forgot to turn off the stove and suddenly flames shot up. I screamed so loudly that the neighbors thought there was a burglar. She continued, I threw water on it, but in a panic, I grabbed dish soap by mistake and the entire place transformed into a bubble bath. Her laughter was infectious and she clutched her stomach as if reliving her fondest memory. Nathan looked at her, his brow furrowed, and said, You're a disaster. He spoke, but his tone was devoid of its usual coolness. After taking a sip of water, he unexpectedly broke the silence. Once I had an encounter with a stray cat while attempting to shoo it away and I ended up with a scratch. It was resting on my porch when I took the broom to shoo it away, but it spun around, leaped at me, and clawed my arm, pain like nothing else. He raised his left hand, revealing a faint scar near his wrist, the corner of his mouth twitching upward as if amused by the memory. Elena's jaw dropped and then she erupted into even louder laughter. Oh my goodness. You experienced a feline's wrath. I assumed your disdain was reserved for birds. It seems that cats are not exempt from your ire either. It seems you have a genuine talent for connecting with animals, don't you? She leaned in, examining the scar as if it were a precious gem. See? We're not so different after all. I make a mess and you bear the marks. We're both a mess in our own unique ways, but I'm not like you, Nathan retorted immediately, though his expression softened. He placed his glass down and gazed out at the yard. You're more vocal than I anticipated. I'm not accustomed to individuals like you. He hesitated, as if on the brink of revealing more, then fell quiet. Elena inclined her head, observing him for a moment before gently inquiring. You don't truly despise me, are you? I realize I can be a bit loud. Folks around here often say I talk too much. But I can't help it. Her voice lowered, revealing a rare trace of concern as if she feared he might stand up and walk away. Nathan turned to her, his eyes narrowing as if he were carefully considering his response. I have a lower disdain for you than I do for the pigeons. He stated calmly, a hint of dry wit in his voice. It's bearable. He grabbed an orange from the bag, peeling it slowly, his movements clumsy as if he wasn't used to doing this in front of someone. But stop singing, your voice is terrible. Hey, Elena exclaimed, feigning offense. My voice isn't terrible. It's one of a kind. If you hear me sing again, you'll adore it. She swiftly took an orange from his hands, peeling it skillfully and offering him a segment. Eat this and stop complaining. It's a gift from me. Don't get the wrong idea. She winked, echoing his earlier line, making Nathan pause for a second. He took the segment, bit into it, and grimaced. Sour, he muttered, but kept eating. Elena laughed. See, I told you, you picked terrible oranges. They sat there, eating and bickering over who was clumsier, who deserved the pigeon's wrath more. For the first time, there were no notes. No trolling, just 2 individuals conversing beneath the sun, a couple of sour oranges connecting their thoughts. As Nathan rose to depart, he glanced back, his voice soft. Thanks for the other day at the hospital. He didn't go into detail, but Elena got it, she smiled. No problem, broom guy. Next time you faint, just call me first. I'll drag you for free, she teased. Nathan shook his head and walked away, but she could have sworn she caught a glimpse of a tiny, fleeting smile, just enough to brighten her day. Chapter 6, Love, Slow and Hilarious. After their first genuine conversation on the porch, Elena felt as if she had chipped away at Nathan's rigid exterior, even if just a little. She no longer referred to him as broom guy in her thoughts, though. She continued to delight in teasing him with her playful antics. Aware of his illness and the limited time they had, she remained steadfast in her resolve not to let it overshadow their moments together. If he had to endure gloomy days, she would be his ray of sunshine. She reminded herself that her unique brand of brightness often included a few awkward moments. That day, Elena resolved to enlist Nathan's help in the garden. She had already discarded the lifeless cacti from her front yard and aimed to fill the space with a flower bed, something lively to brighten the dull neighborhood. Standing at number 9's door, she gripped a small shovel and a packet of daisy seeds, knocking with enthusiasm. Nathan answered, his expression grim as if she had disturbed his slumber. "What do you want now?" he asked gruffly. "To garden with me," while Elena grinned, brandishing the shovel like a trophy. "I'm cultivating blooms in the front yard. Assist me in uncovering." "All right, don't refuse. I can tell you're available." She gave a playful wink, but Nathan merely crossed his arms and shot her a fierce glare. "I'm unsure about how to cultivate things," he muttered. "I only know how to dig graves." As he turned to close the door, Elena wedged the shovel into the opening, almost losing her grip on it. "Hey, don't leave," she shouted, "whether it's digging graves or just moving dirt. It's identical. Let's avoid any burials this time around. Let's go." "It'll be fun," Nathan sighed, but eventually took the shovel from her and trudged out to the yard, looking as if he had been sentenced to community service. The sun shone gently, the air carrying a faint scent of dry grass. Elena pointed to a spot in her yard. "Dig there, deep enough for the seeds." Nathan nodded and started digging, but after 3 scoops, a loud whoosh erupted, and water sprayed from the ground like a fire hose, blasting him square in the face. He shouted in disbelief as Elena paused for a moment before bursting into laughter. "Oh my God, you hit a pipe!" she exclaimed, hopping through the mud to turn off the valve by the fence. But she lost her footing, tumbling into the puddle and soaking herself completely. Nathan, equally drenched, wiped his face, looking at her with a blend of frustration and acceptance. "You told me to dig," he snapped, his hair clinging to his forehead like a drenched feline. Elena scrambled to her feet, water dripping from her clothes, yet she couldn't contain her laughter. "You're a pro at digging graves. 1 scoop and it's a geyser," she teased, splashing more water onto him. Nathan shot her a glare, but then surprised her with a smirk and a short, clear laugh. "Your trouble," he muttered, tossing the shovel aside and standing there, soaked. Elena's laughter faded as she stared at him, her heart racing. "Did you just chuckle?" she inquired, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Oh my goodness, I actually made you laugh. I'm incredible." She reached out to pat his shoulder but slipped again, nearly falling. Nathan instinctively grabbed her arm to steady her, then quickly let go, turning away as if he were embarrassed. "Don't misunderstand," he spoke, yet his tone was devoid of its typical sharpness. They stood there, soaked to the bone, gazing at the muddy chaos and shattered pipe before erupting into laughter together for the first time. Elena felt a warmth bloom in her chest, even as the cold water seeped through her shirt. Just a few days later, she arrived at Nathan's with a tray of freshly baked chocolate cookies. Not burnt this time, but a bit sticky since she hadn't allowed them to cool before stacking. She knocked and called out, "Come get your cookies. I made them awesome." Nathan opened the door, eyeing the tray skeptically. "You again," he muttered, but stepped onto the porch and sat when she tugged him down beside her. "Try one." Elena shoved a cookie into his hand, but her clumsiness tipped the tray. "Oh no," she yelped, trying to catch it, but it crashed onto Nathan, chocolate smearing across his shirt. She froze, hand over her mouth, then shouted louder. "Alas, this is unfortunate. I just transformed you into a colossal cookie." She lunged to clean him with her sleeve, only managing to spread the mess further. Nathan remained motionless, a streak of chocolate across his face, staring at her in disbelief. "You're the reason I won't make it to next year," he mumbled, his voice a blend of fatigue and humor. But then he surprised her by laughing, the sound resonating across the stillness of the porch. Elena stared in disbelief before bursting into laughter herself, nearly spilling tears from the intensity of her amusement. It was the first time your laughter rang out so loudly. She cheered, clapping and splattering chocolate onto her own face. Because you're an idiot? Nathan replied, wiping his face but still chuckling. He picked a cookie off his shirt, took a bite, and shrugged. Edible, too sticky, though. Elena plopped down beside him, grabbing another piece and eating it happily despite her gooey hands. See, I told you they're good. She certainly took pride in her accomplishments. They both appeared as if they had just emerged from a chaotic pastry shop. Sitting together, they indulged in their treats, chocolate smudged on their faces, while engaging in conversation. Elena shared her near-disastrous experience of almost setting her house ablaze with forgotten birthday candles, while Nathan recounted his attempt to repair a bike, only to break the front wheel. Their silly anecdotes and laughter created an atmosphere of joy, making their connection feel lighter than ever. However, as the sunset cast a warm glow, Elena caught a glimpse of melancholy in his eyes and couldn't resist asking, "Are you scared?" Nathan ceased his laughter, gazing out at the yard. His grip on the sticky cookie tightened as he felt a wave of apprehension about what he had quietly asked. Everything Elena said seemed to soften in the air, her voice gently addressing his illness. "I understand the situation, and I truly wish for your happiness. Yet I find myself at a loss for how to help." She cast her gaze downward, nervously toying with a chocolate stain on her shirt, her smile absent for the first time. Nathan remained quiet for what felt like an eternity before finally speaking. "I'm more afraid of you than I am of death," he said with a steady tone, a touch of humor lacing his words, as Elena glanced up, blinking, clearly startled by me. She inquired, then let out a soft chuckle, acknowledging her own clumsiness. Nathan nodded, a smirk playing on his lips. "Your ability to bring laughter is something I find myself resisting. I don't want to like you." He turned away, yet Elena's heart raced. She found it hard to discern whether he was being sincere or playful, yet a subtle melancholy began to settle in. It wasn't for her own sake, but for him, as he struggled to maintain distance despite his true feelings. "What is it about liking me that troubles him?" She spoke softly. "I feel the same way about you. Though you're a bit grumpy, your laughter is endearing." She picked up the last piece of the cookie and handed it to him, saying, "Eat this and stop being afraid of me. I don't bite. I simply let things fall." She winked, attempting to coax another smile from Nathan, who took the cookie, staring at her for a moment before taking a bite. "You're a disaster," he muttered, but his eyes softened, as if a piece of his wall had crumbled. They sat there in the fading light, laughing and aching, close yet distant, a slow, clumsy, but real kind of love. Chapter 7. The Incident. He pushes. She jokes. The relationship between Elena and Nathan had slowly woven itself into the fabric of their lives, though neither would admit it out loud. For Elena, those clumsy moments with him, from the gushing pipe to the sticky chocolate cookie fiasco, were little bursts of light in her day. She wasn't good at facing sadness. She decided to laugh, hoping to bring a smile to his face, even though she sensed the shadows he carried within. She couldn't reach for Nathan. Every time he heard her ridiculous shouts or read her trolling notes, his heart felt lighter yet heavier too. He knew his time was slipping away. That day, Elena brought Nathan a box of freshly baked gingerbread cookies. They weren't burnt, but their shapes were warped like bizarre creatures from a cartoon. She had once witnessed her pounding on number 9's door, shouting, "Come and grab your cookies. I made them look like you, ugly and all." She laughed loudly, expecting his usual grumble or that half-annoyed, half-amused glare. But when Nathan opened the door, she instantly sensed something was off. He was thinner, his eyes sunken, and his hand trembled as he gripped the frame. "You brought stuff again?" he asked, his voice hoarse and lifeless. Elena frowned, forcing a smile. "Sure, gingerbread. If you don't take them, I'll devour them all." Don't say I didn't warn you. She lifted the box, but Nathan remained unresponsive, neither smiling nor retorting. His eyes were distant, as if he wished to erase her from his view. Listen, he said, his voice quiet yet cutting. Stop expending your energy on me. You're incredibly awkward. No one can tolerate you. Go annoy someone else. His words struck her like a blow, leaving Elena frozen, the box teetering in her grasp. Could you repeat that? She inquired, her voice wavering. She attempted to chuckle, believing he was jesting. Yet his gaze was icy, lacking any trace of amusement. Could you clarify what you mean? Are you really going to throw me out? Nathan averted his gaze, his fingers clenching the doorframe until his knuckles turned pale. I don't need anyone, he declared, his voice as unyielding as granite. Do you not understand? I feel like I'm fading away, Elena. Cease squandering your time on me. He entered and forcefully shut the door, leaving her there with the cookies, a suffocating emptiness in her chest. Elena held back her tears. She struggled with tears, yet a weight pressed down on her chest. She realized at last that he bore no hatred towards her. He was distancing himself from her out of fear, pure fear. She felt the sting of pain in his absence. Idiot, she muttered, making her way home and carelessly tossing the box onto the kitchen table. She collapsed onto the couch, her gaze fixed on the ceiling as she searched for an answer. He believes I can't manage it. I may be clumsy, but I am not weak. She was aware of his illness, understood that his time was limited, yet hearing him express it so directly still hurt. Anger coursed through her, but deeper than that was a sense of pity for him. She felt sorry for how he had shut himself away, as if that was the sole means to shield her. In a fit of frustration, she marched to the kitchen, took a sticky note, and wrote, "Fine, I'm leaving, but don't shed tears when you realize you miss me." Her appearance was far from appealing, and Elena was determined not to let him believe she would surrender without a fight. She chose her playful act of retribution. With a swift motion, she slapped the note onto his door, knocked once, and dashed home, drawing the curtains tight. Determined to vanish from his sight, she secluded herself, indulging in comedies on TV, nibbling on stale cookies, and reassuring herself, let's observe how long he endures. On the first day, Elena lounged on the couch, engrossed in a superhero film. She chuckled at the silly moments, yet her heart wasn't truly engaged. She envisioned Nathan glancing at her note, murmuring something under his breath before discarding it. She likely believes he's won, she muttered, tossing the remote aside and exclaiming, oh no. She picked it up and kept watching, but every laugh reminded her of his rare chuckles. She knew he wanted her gone, but she didn't want to leave. Not because she was foolish, but because she felt he deserved someone by his side, even just for a little while. On the second day, she ran out of good movies and switched to eating burnt cookies stashed in the cupboard. She peeked out the window through a slit in the curtains, seeing number 9's yard empty. He won't be emerging, she whispered, likely trapped within, casting blame upon himself. She was furious, yet her mind was consumed with concern. He would be alone, consumed by worry, with no one to inquire about his well-being. How are you holding up? She felt an urge to stride over, pound on his door, and scream that he couldn't just cast her aside. But she restrained herself. No, let him make the first move, she reminded herself, only to accidentally douse her shirt with water while exclaiming, not again. By the third day, Nathan lingered in her mind more than she was willing to acknowledge. She had exhausted her supply of cookies and patience, and a sense of emptiness began to settle in. I truly miss him, she whispered while clutching a pillow, yet he desired this. She was unaware that at number 9, Nathan found himself in a struggle, grappling with his thoughts. He read Elena's note the instant she placed it on his door. Don't cry when you miss me. Your face is ugly enough, he muttered, clutching the paper. He intended to discard it, yet it remained on the kitchen table, staring back at him like a haunting reminder. He understood that his time was limited, just a few months left. Perhaps it was clearer than ever that the doctor had made his feelings known. He didn't want Elena nearby, not out of disdain, but out of concern for her tears. She would feel pain in his absence. He longed for her. Her spirited outbursts, her awkwardness, her silly behaviors that brought him joy. Yet he held back. She deserved more than he could offer. He sat in his dimly lit room, hands shaking as another wave of coughing overtook him. On the second day, he gazed out at the yard. No, Elena, no dreadful singing. No new notes. Good, he muttered. Yet an emptiness lingered in his chest. He felt her absence keenly. He refused to acknowledge it. By the third day, the coughing had intensified, his chest throbbed, and he found himself reaching for her note once more. Your face is ugly enough. He reread, and the corner of his mouth twitched. He longed to approach her, to express that he never intended to push her away for good. Yet he found himself lacking the courage. Grabbing his broom, he stepped outside, feigning an effort to shoo away birds, all the while stealing glances at number 8 through a gap in her curtains. There, he noticed a new note on her window. I'm still here, you know. How are you doing? Elena felt a chill as her heart raced, and for the first time in 3 days, she was truly aware of her surroundings. He experienced a sense of relief as Elena peeked from inside, noticing him standing there with the broom flailing. She chuckled, letting the glass slip from her grasp. She was shouting, "Oh no, not again!" Yet, she remained unfazed. She was aware he hadn't surrendered, and neither had she. She recognized that he distanced himself to shield her, yet she refused to allow him to confront it alone, whether he wanted her there or not. Chapter 8. The fake birthday laughter through tears. After 3 days of secluding herself with stale cookies and comedy films, Elena resolved she'd wallowed long enough. The idea of leaving Nathan to languish in his somber silence was unbearable. Not after witnessing him in the yard, wielding his broom as if it were a means to communicate. She understood he preferred distance, but deep down, she knew he required her presence, whether he would acknowledge it or not. I'll make him laugh big this time, she promised herself, standing in her kitchen adorned with a flower-streaked apron, preparing for her most ambitious scheme yet, a fake birthday party. Elena had no idea when Nathan's actual birthday was. He had never shared it, and she wouldn't dare inquire. But she thought, if he doesn't have much time left, I'm preparing a birthday surprise for him. She baked a large vanilla cake adorned with white frosting, slightly askew from over-whipping the cream. It's decorated to resemble Nathan, complete with chocolate candy eyes and a mouth crafted from red icing, with a playful inscription on top. Happy birthday to the quirky soul at number 9, with messy handwriting, chuckling at her creation. It's not conventionally beautiful, but it's endearing, just like him. She whispered and then hurried away to gather the neighbors. She rapped gently on Mrs. Martha's door. Mr. Tom and a few others are hosting a surprise birthday party for Nathan tonight at the park. Don't let him know, Mrs. Martha said with a grin. I'll bring the tea. Mr. Tom acknowledged with a nod. I'll bring chairs. Elena even enlisted the neighborhood kids, promising candy if they'd sing the birthday song. She gathered balloons, paper hats, and a small folding table, setting it all up in the little park at the end of Elmwood Street. By evening, Elena stood at number 9's door, wearing a daisy-printed t-shirt and a glittery paper hat. She pounded on the door, yelling, Nathan, get out here. It's urgent. Nathan opened it, his usual scowl in place, but his eyes flickered with surprise at her standing there, hat askew. What are you up to? He said brusquely. Come with me. Elena's face lit up as she seized his hand and pulled him outside before he had a chance to object. There are no inquiries. Just come on. I promise I won't drop anything this time. Nathan tugged his hand back, but she pulled harder, and he shuffled after her, muttering under his breath. You're quite the nuisance. They arrived at the park, and as Nathan moved beyond the trees, the entire neighborhood erupted in cheers. Joyful birthday celebrations filled the air as balloons danced and children dashed about. Mrs. Martha lifted her teacup in a toast, while at the center, a grand cake gleamed with the words, "Happy Birthday" to the nutcase at number 9, illuminated by the glow of flashlights. Mr. Tom had brought Nathan, who stood frozen, jaw dropped, staring at Elena with a blend of anger and disbelief. "What the hell is this?" he snapped, but his voice wavered, revealing his confusion. Elena shrugged, grinning widely. "A surprise party for you. I don't know when your real birthday is, so I'm celebrating early just in case you miss my cake." She dragged him to the table, plopping a paper hat on his head before he could protest. "Wear it. You appear quite charming," she yelled, causing the children to erupt in laughter, while Nathan shot a glare, gripping the hat as if he were ready to throw it. "My birthday is next month," he remarked with a hint of dryness, yet his gaze wandered through the crowd, searching for Mrs. Martha. "Mr. Tom," the children then stumbled upon the unsightly cake. "What did you create that's so dreadful?" "It's you," Elena chuckled, gesturing at the chocolate eyes. "Spot on. Ugly, yet endearing," she applauded, signaling for the kids to begin singing. Wishing Nathan a very happy birthday. Happy birthday to Nathan. Their off-key, chaotic voices filled the air with vibrancy. Nathan stood there, still holding the hat, his face flushing. Whether from anger or embarrassment, it was hard to tell. No one could tell. "Blow out the candles," Elena yelled, lighting a few she'd hastily stuck in the cake, nearly dropping the match onto the table. Nathan shot her another glare but leaned down, extinguishing them in one puff, earning wild applause from the kids. "Cut the cake," she cheered, handing him a plastic knife, but her clumsiness sent it tumbling to the ground. "Oh no," she yelped, bending to grab it, her own hat falling into the grass. Nathan watched her, then did something. No one anticipated it. He let out a hearty, resonant laugh that reverberated through the park, so sincere and powerful that the entire crowd fell silent for a moment to take it in. "You're a disaster." He picked up the knife, slicing a piece and handing it to her. "Eat it and don't drop it." Elena took the piece, her eyes sparkling. "That was your most boisterous laugh yet," she exclaimed, bouncing and almost dropping the piece. "I was certain of it." "I'm fantastic." She took a bite and then handed pieces to Mrs. Martha. Mr. Tom and the kids transformed the party into a delightful chaos. The children surrounded Nathan, pulling him into a lively game of tag, while Mr. Tom animatedly recounted the ice cream clown chase story, sending everyone into fits of laughter. Nathan, donning a paper hat for the entire evening, held a slice of cake, glaring yet unable to suppress his smile. Elena stood next to him, observing his laughter, her heart feeling unexpectedly warm. "See, I told you you deserve some fun," she remarked. She spoke softly, ensuring only he could hear. Nathan turned to her, pausing for a moment before he muttered, "You're foolish." Yet, his tone lacked harshness, and his eyes softened as if he were expressing gratitude without the words. The party faded into the night, and the children departed with their hands filled with candy. Mrs. Martha lifted her empty teacup while Mr. Tom folded the chairs. Elna and Nathan lingered beneath the moonlight beside the nearly devoured cake. "Thanks," he said softly, hands in his pockets, his hat still crooked on his head. "But don't do this again. I'm not accustomed to this." "There won't be another opportunity." Elena chuckled as she snatched the final crumbly piece. "I celebrated ahead of time. Now you must wait until your true birthday for the ultimate cake." She winked, letting a crumb fall as she shouted, "Oh no, not again." Nathan watched her chuckling softly, and this time he didn't scold. He just stood there in the moonlight, feeling lighter than he had in months. Chapter 9. The final days of joy until the last moment. After the fake birthday party in the park, Nathan stopped trying to push Elena away. He still grumbled, still glared when she dropped things, but he no longer slammed the door in her face or told her to find someone else. Perhaps that big laugh under the moonlight had changed him, not making him forget his illness, but making him realize that living alone in his remaining days wasn't what he wanted. Elena, with her clumsiness and ever-present smile, had become an indispensable part of his life, and she, with all her goofy persistence, decided they'd enjoy every moment together until the end. The next day, Elena knocked on number 9's door, holding a bucket of yellow paint and a huge brush. "Nathan, come out." Her voice rang out, reverberating through the yard. "How about we give your house a fresh coat of paint? This green is too depressing," Nathan thought as he opened the door, eyeing her suspiciously. "Paint the house," he suggested. He inquired brusquely, "Are you familiar with the art of painting?" "Nope." Elena beamed as she pushed the bucket ahead, "but I picked up on things quickly." Nathan sighed as he accepted the brush she offered, stepping outside with an air of resignation. His expressions hinted at his anticipation of yet another impending disaster. They began on the front wall, but, true to form, Elena quickly transformed the task into a whirlwind of chaos. With a vigorous swing of the brush, she sent paint flying, splattering Nathan's face before it found its way into her own hair. "Oh no!" she exclaimed, attempting to wipe it off him with her sleeve, only to smear it further. "Are you painting the wall or me?" Nathan snapped, though the corner of his mouth betrayed a hint of amusement. In retaliation, he swiped a streak of paint across her cheek, prompting Elena to shriek in surprise. "Hey, that's unfair," and it swung back, transforming them both into vibrant, living canvases of yellow. Then they realized the paint wasn't yellow, as Elena had assumed. It was a fiery orange. She'd misread at the store. "Oh my God, your house is a giant orange now," she howled, clutching her stomach while Nathan shook his head, muttering, "You're a disaster." But he wasn't mad. They sat on the porch, faces and clothes streaked with paint, staring at the garish orange wall glowing in the sun. "My house has never been this bright," Nathan said quietly, and Elena caught a hint of warmth in his voice. She smiled, proving her skill just a few days later. They chose to welcome a stray cat, the gray one. Nathan had once pursued Elena with his broom, which she playfully named Broom, both to tease him and because she believed it suited him. "It'll keep you company when I'm not around," she said. She mentioned bringing the cat into Nathan's kitchen, but the broom was anything but compliant. It sprang onto the table, sending a box of cookies tumbling down. Elena dashed around the room, unraveling a roll of paper towels from the shelf. "Broom, stop!" she yelled, chasing after it. But she tripped over a chair, crashing down and pulling Nathan, who was trying to catch the cat, along with her. They sprawled on the floor, tangled in paper towels, while Broom perched triumphantly on the fridge, staring down at them. "Did you adopt a cat or a monster?" Nathan grumbled, but he burst into loud laughter that filled the chaotic kitchen. Elena crawled up, cookie crumbs in her hair, laughing. "It's like you, grumpy but adorable." They cleaned up, scolding Broom between giggles, and for the first time, Nathan didn't feel exhausted despite the ache in his chest. The days that followed were filled with such silly antics. They tried fixing the faucet Elena had once broken, but Nathan turned the wrong valve, flooding the yard again. They replanted daisies, yet Elena neglected to water them, and Nathan's digging transformed the flower bed into a pit. Still, they remained unfazed. They shared laughter and playful arguments, yet remained inseparable. One evening, they found themselves on the porch of number 9, a broom resting between them, and for the first time, they delved into more profound topics. Nathan looked out at the yard, his voice gentle. "I've been living with heart failure since I was 20. The doctors mentioned a transplant as an option, but I declined. I witnessed my mom's passing on the operating table during her procedure. That wasn't my intention." He paused, gripping the edge of the chair. "I thought that living a short life but free was better than dragging it out in misery." Elena listened quietly, resting her hand on his, gentle and steady. "I wasn't good at offering comfort." She spoke gently, "Yet I understand. You made your choice. I don't hold it against you." She gazed at him, her eyes shining even with the heaviness in her heart. "But you must allow me to remain by your side. All right, I can't bear the thought of you being alone." Nathan turned to her, his gaze lingering for a long moment. "Do you ever feel weary?" He inquired if I'm feeling irritable. "I'm feeling unwell." I can't give you anything, Elena said with a faint smile, shaking her head. I once believed that love had to be flawless. She spoke softly, her voice filled with warmth. My parents separated when I was young, and I witnessed their constant arguments. This made me fearful of love. However, as I matured, I made mistakes like burning cookies and spilling things, and I came to understand that life doesn't have to be perfect. It's akin to ruining a cake yet savoring it nonetheless. She winked, attempting to bring a smile to his face. You're my burnt cake, Nathan chuckled, a rough yet sincere sound. You've burnt my whole life, he said, his hand gently brushing against hers, but I don't hate it. He gazed at her, his eyes more tender than ever. Thank you for staying. I don't want you to go, Elena laughed loudly, nearly dropping the glass she held, but this time she caught it. See? I'm improving. She cheered, then leaned her head on his shoulder, gentle and sure. I don't want to go either. You're the first person who's made me feel really happy. They sat there under the moonlight, a broom yawning between them. Nathan's final days passed like that, imperfect, fleeting, but full of laughter. One day, they tried baking together, but Elena swapped salt for sugar and Nathan winced after a bite. Trying to poison me? She laughed. No, just making sure you remember me. He glared but ate the salty slice anyway, muttering, good in your weird way. On his last day, Nathan was weaker, but he still sat on the porch with her, watching a broom chase pigeons. You're the biggest trouble I've ever had, he said faintly. Elena smiled, holding his hand. And you're my favorite trouble. She responded. They remained silent, simply enjoying each other's company until the very end, as if time could not take away what they had experienced together. Chapter 10, Laughter and Memory. Nathan's last days unfolded like a series of joyful, tender moments. Elena would never forget. They painted his house the wrong color, adopted a cat that wrecked the kitchen, and laughed together as if time weren't their enemy. But one quiet afternoon on number 9's porch, Elena looked at Nathan, coughing hoarsely, his trembling hand clutching a glass of water, and couldn't hold back her question. Are you out of your mind? She knitted her brow, a mix of jest and sincerity in her tone. I mean, you've been grumpy with everyone, chased me off a dozen times, and now here I am, sticking around to annoy you. Are you truly out of your mind? Nathan turned to her, his weary eyes glinting with astonishment. He flashed a rare smirk. She cherished maybe I am, he rasped, but not out of hatred for you. I'm just tired. He didn't go into detail, but Elena sensed the heaviness in his words, not irritation, but a fatigue he concealed. She chuckled heartily, giving his shoulder a playful pat, whether it was crazy or not. He shook his head, muttering, just don't kick me out again. You're the wild one. Yet his gaze softened as if her question had reached a profound part of his heart. Elena was unaware that this question would turn into his final offering to her. One early morning, as sunlight filtered through the number 9 curtains, she knocked, cradling a bowl of chicken soup she had prepared with meticulous attention. No spills this time, unlike their first encounter. Nathan, come eat your soup. I absolutely crushed it. She shouted, but silence enveloped her. With a determined push, she opened the door and discovered him on the couch, serene as though in slumber, his hand gently resting on his chest. Next to him lay a yellow sticky note, its hurried script halting her in her tracks. Thanks for asking if I'm crazy, funny thing. I'm not insane. Exhausted, Nathan sat there as she nestled beside him, holding the soup tightly. Tears flowed down her cheeks, yet a smile broke through as she managed to say, you idiot, with a choked voice. I brought soup, but you refused to eat it. She placed the bowl on the table, gently smoothing his tousled hair, resembling a bird's nest. She had always teased and whispered that she hadn't spilled it this time, urging him to wake up and eat. But he remained still, and she understood he would never savor her soup. She wiped her eyes, mustering a grin, telling him, your face really is ugly, but I miss you already. Nathan had departed quietly, just as he had wished, no hospital. Only the human touch. In his small house, the cat curled up in the corner while Elena stood in the yard, calling for an ambulance as they took him away, clutching his note. She didn't linger in sadness for long. Instead, she transformed her longing into something joyful, silly, and worth embracing, reminiscent of Nathan's laughter. A month later, Elena opened a small shop on the corner of Elmwood Street, close to the park where they had celebrated that whimsical birthday party. She named it Grumpy Soup Corner, a playful and warm tribute to Nathan and that first spilled soup he never got to taste. The shop was painted a vibrant orange, the color they had once chuckled about, and it displayed a wooden sign out front that read, good soup, but don't throw it at anyone. She crafted it by hand, in a messy style like their old notes, and every time she caught sight of it, it brought a smile to her face. She chuckled at the thought of Nathan's scowl. You spilled everything, and now you're starting a shop? The shop specialized in soup, a dish Nathan had never tried, but she was resolute in her quest to master it, hoping to atone for that initial mishap. She had truly learned to cook well, though. She occasionally scorched pots or confused spices. Her inaugural customer was Mrs. Martha, who savored chicken soup and remarked it was superior to the batch left at Nathan's door. Mr. Tom brought a chair to share the tale of Nathan's ice cream clown chase, filling the shop with laughter. Elena stood behind the counter, adorned with a glittery paper hat, serving and recounting stories about dropping cookies on Nathan and his mishap with the water pipe. "He never touched my soup," she'd say with a grin, "but I bet he'd call it terrible and finish it regardless." She took in the stray cat Nathan once despised, the gray one. He had referred to a furry nuisance, and she decided to name it Nath instead of Broom this time, desiring a connection with him. Nath would occasionally nap on the counter, inadvertently toppling customers' water, which elicited Elena's familiar exclamation. "Oh, not this again. He's just like that other one." She'd grumble while petting Nath, who was grumpy yet endearing. One day, Nath accidentally knocked over a bowl of soup. She ladled and laughed, recalling how Nathan had sent him to tease her a year after Nathan's passing. Elena sat in the shop on a quiet evening, gazing at the park through the window. The place grew busy, not just for the soup, but for her stories shared with a clumsy, honest cheer. She hung Nathan's last note on the wall beside the sign, a gentle reminder. Customers inquired about it, and she'd smile. "It originates from the initial individual." I inquired, "Are you out of your mind?" He labeled me foolish, yet he remained. She omitted crucial details about his illness and the soup he never touched, as she wished for them to recall Nathan as she did, a charmingly eccentric character. Not a tragedy, Elena continued her life as she always had, optimistic, clumsy, and brimming with laughter. She continued to drop things, sang off key, planted flowers, and forgot to water them. Yet, each time she glanced at Nath, at the note on the wall, she felt Nathan somewhere muttering, "You're a mess." She moved on quickly from her sorrow. He wouldn't have desired that, he was simply weary. She reassured herself, yet he found joy in my presence. One day, she lingered outside the shop, observing the neighborhood children frolic in the park. She recalled the phony birthday celebration, Nathan's laughter echoing in her mind, and a smile crept onto her face. She crafted a fresh note and affixed it to the shop door, inquiring of someone today. "Are you out of your mind for being the only one daring enough to inquire?" It was a lesson she had absorbed from Nathan. A seemingly trivial question could transform a life. Elena wasn't in search of another Nathan. He was truly unique, characterized by his grumpy demeanor and infrequent smiles. She persevered, managing the shop and caring for Nath, while burning cookies as if it were an unshakable routine. Her life wasn't flawless, but it was satisfying, akin to a soup he never sampled, reminiscent of a quirky individual who chuckled because of her. Each time she laughed, she felt Nathan, somewhere, smirking and murmuring, "You're such an idiot." The narrative concludes, yet love doesn't demand perfection, only honesty, like a charred cake that remains delicious. Inquire, "Are you okay?" One question has the power to change everything. Embrace laughter, even amidst tears, for joy battles against loss. Savor each moment. Don't wait for forever, time doesn't promise it. Beautiful memories are treasures, eternal like Nathan's note to Elena. Life's worth living when we dare to be clumsy, to love, to laugh. Elena carries on with soup and her smile, reminding us that happiness lies in the small, real things. Thank you for following this heartfelt journey. Share your thoughts about the story in the comments below. If you believe that true love can withstand all trials and sometimes begins in the simplest of ways, don't forget to hit the like button and share the story with your friends. To never miss out on touching and meaningful tales, subscribe to our channel and help us spread messages of love and warmth to everyone.